And welcome back to the channel, guys. Tool reviews of tools I use. I'm going to be taking you through the plastering tools that I used to carry when I was a handyman, carrying out skimming of walls, ceilings, plasterboard repairs, you name it. I've done a lot of work around this field. I'm going to take you through the tools that I have in my main toolbox. Obviously you can't fit all your plastering tools in this, and I don't want to try to. I want to try and keep this reasonably light, but this is really working out well for me. So as you can see, I've got my trowels and I store them just on the back of the toolbox. I'll spin it around in a second, and they just sit nicely there where the blades are reasonably well protected. I need to try and buy one of these leather covers for this one to try and protect the edges. Nothing worse than you just wearing a nice trowel and then you go and nick it on something. So I always try and keep it well protected. That's what makes the job so much easier when the trowel starts to really bed in. It's another reason why I'm always working on two trowels, because I want the other ones slowly getting good as the other ones perhaps wearing out. I've had this one for years and it's served me really well. It's a Marshalltown. I believe it's a 15-inch, but I'll check that in a second. But yeah, they just slot there, out of the way. Got to be careful on the edges, of course. Don't want to cut yourself. It's covered up. I keep my hawk just stuffed down there, and that just sits nicely in there. Let me spin this round for you so you can see how to carry it. That's the tools I carry. There you go. So there's a lot of stuff, all different shapes and sizes. One thing I always found difficult to carry all of these tools in a way that just organised it well enough, and that I didn't have to take multiple trips back to the van. I find this is the best setup I've ever had. It's a DeWalt tote box. It goes with a whole system that all clicks in together, and there's a whole multitude of boxes that you can buy that work with this, but they're really strong, really hard wearing. I don't see this breaking anytime soon. Get this one out of the way. It's just a scraper. You'll see this in my painting and decorating box sometimes. I swap them out depending on the job that I'm doing, but this is really useful. Big 6-inch one, and just scrapes plaster, Artex, whatever you need. It's just useful. Just down here we've got a little corner trowel made by Marshalltown. It's still got a nice edge on it. Just if you're working wet corners, you can use this just to speed things up a little bit. Very useful tool to have. I wouldn't be without that. I used to have a whole lot more plastering tools than this, and I sold them off because I realised I'd just gone a little bit too far with it. Too many trowels of every single description. You really need to just try and keep this basic, especially if plastering isn't your full-time occupation, which it isn't for me. There's not a whole lot you need once you get going. Trowels, I'll get back to these. I've got a nice gauging trowel there. It's by Ragney. They get a lot of hate, Ragney do, compared to Marshalltown, but it serves me well. It's got good welds on it and everything like that. They're all caked a little bit in cement and things, but yeah, these are all right for the money. They're not too bad. Bucket trowels, I really like their bucket trowels because they've got nice rounded edges on them. Seems to be made of stainless steel, so it's not going to rust in your bucket or anything like that. And yeah, these are good. Carry a multitude of brushes. The more brushes you got, the cleaner you can keep things. You can keep your tools and keep the work area. I keep this brush. It's like an industrial cleaning brush. I'm not sure exactly what it's for, but just check out the industrial cleaning supply places, and you'll probably find something a bit better than what you're already carrying. I find this really good for cleaning the trowel, so I leave it in my bucket just underneath my spot board, and it really strips the plaster off nicely. Yeah, really good stiff bristles, which is what I like having in there. But I also keep this brush in there as well, just a scruffy old paintbrush. It's a Harris one, seems to have lasted reasonably well. Sometimes you just need a softer brush to get in the gaps and things. there's no reason to have dirty tools, especially once your handle starts getting caked up with plaster and adhesive and things like that. It just becomes a whole lot more uncomfortable. So I really do try and keep everything clean as I work. There's no excuse not to. And even skin plaster, it comes off if you soak it. There's no reason to leave it on your trowel. I see some really nice trowels going on eBay where people are selling them absolute caked in plaster. They're really nice, expensive Marshalltown, and no one wants to buy them, but it's really easy to get off. On that note, though, I also don't use my skimming trowels for adhesive, for any tiling or anything like that. I'm not using these trowels. I use a scruffier older trowel so it doesn't build up. But this Marshalltown's a good one. I'm going to keep it to the side here. That's my hawk. Again, keep it nice and clean. It's got a nice layer. From over the years, it's just got a nice sort of shiny finish on it, and everything's starting to wear in all nicely on it. It's yeah, it's a great hawk. This has served me well. It's not breaking anytime soon. It's starting to get little curves on the edges and stuff. It's nice. This is my main trowel I've been trying to wear in since forever. I don't do any rendering, which is like the traditional way of wearing in a trowel, or I don't do much rendering, shall I say. So it's just taken quite a while to break in. But yeah, love this stainless steel. Let me get a measurement for you. Never can remember. Alright, so that's the 14-inch. So the carbon trowel that I've got there is the 13-inch then. Yeah, it's just a little bit shorter. But yeah, I'm liking working with this. Tape measures. These DeWalt's, I've got to say, absolute rubbish. I wouldn't recommend them one bit. It's a bit of a letdown for what is such a good brand generally. This one's still working all right. This one's all jammed up no matter what I do. It just comes out all stiff and it's all jolting inside. Something's up with it. It's yeah, there you go. I can't even get it back in there. Horrible bit of junk. Never buy the tape measures on sale at Screwfix. The ones that sit by the counter, don't do it. Set of tin snips. If you're doing window reveals and beading and stuff like that, you're going to need a set of these, and you're probably going to want this style because they just spring open. You don't want the old style Gilbo ones. These are just nice and quick and easy to use. They come in all sorts of shapes and with slants on the teeth, but just a straight one like that. This is made by Faithful. Nothing special, but it works just as good as it should. Brushes, yeah, I carry lots of brushes. Let me go back to these. This one here, it's got slightly longer bristles. Again, it's still got really stiff bristles, which is just good for cleaning skin plaster off. I keep this one in with my mixer separately because I don't want to go passing my brushes all over the place and taking them downstairs. And if I'm working upstairs and if I'm mixing outside, it just depends how I'm working. Then I like to leave this with the mixer where it's just accessible. Saves me trips, saves me forgetting it. I use this big old brush for just cleaning down my spot board. I use it sometimes as a splash brush or for wetting my trowel. It's just really useful. British 6-inch made. No other details on it, I'm afraid, but you'll usually see them in the painting section. Great big thing, probably used for painting fences and so on, but this works nicely. Oh, that's the point. These brushes I often use for putting PVA on the wall as well. It's kind of multi-use. As long as you keep it clean, you can use it for anything. I've got a small midget trowel. Again, I'd like to get a little kind of case. I don't know if they do them for these. Let me know if you know of any. These are just invaluable. I couldn't be without this. I use it like above doorways and in tight spots and reveals and all sorts, around radiators, you name it. They're just really just handy to have. There's a lot of times you'd come really unstuck if you didn't have one of these. Got a plasterboard rasp. This one's got guide rails on it. You can also buy it without the guide rails. I wouldn't say they're essential, but I find them quite useful. Either one, doesn't matter. I've got another one in here as well. I'll use. Yeah, they're usually just lying around when you're working and stuff. So just to have a couple is a good option. I keep pad saws. Sorry, I just wobble my camera a little bit. I keep pad saws in here. So I've got a couple, both by Stanley. This is a Stanley Fat Max. Comes in a sheath. The teeth are really nice and sharp on it. It's worked pretty well, this. I don't keep this in my sort of other toolboxes purely because this sheath is just a pain. It's just a little bit too, takes up a bit too much space. It's kind of unnecessary. And this is an old school Stanley one. If you ever see the cheap ones of these, try and avoid them. The teeth haven't got any bite to them whatsoever. You just make them work hard for yourself. This Stanley model is really quite good for the price. It's still nice and sharp, but I've seen some really rubbish cheap ones. They're just going to make life difficult for you. But yeah, you're going to need them a lot for cutting repairs, or just when you're putting plasterboard around fixtures or anything like that. Then you're going to be using a pad saw. I've got a chisel. Just for knocking down high spots or anything like that, just general work, levering things, just anything really. It's just useful to have something like this that you can scrape with and stuff. Handy. This scraper, it's just a cheapo B&Q one. It's lasted me really well considering what I've put it through over the years. You can see I've absolutely beat the hell out of it so many times. And it just keeps bouncing back. Really strong stainless steel. It's just a B&Q own brand one, dial, but it just doesn't break. When it does, I'll be on the lookout for something else, but it's been sharpened so many times, it just keeps giving. Keep a bunch of blades. Got to be careful with these. They're not. There's got to be a better way of carrying these, but they're 6-inch blades. Go through a lot of these with that scraper that I showed earlier, and yeah, you're going to use a lot of these, so I always have them handy. I'll stick them right there. Just a screwdriver. Just a cheapo one. It's made by Rolson, and it just pops out, and you've got the option of switching out the screwdriver, so you can go slotted, or you can go Phillips head there. There you go, and then slightly bigger on the other end, so you can go for like a number 2 there. It just goes in. It's even got like a little nut driver, so you can use that if you happen to come across that. You're not really going to need much of that in plastering, but it's just good to have a screwdriver in there that you can use. Very cheap, especially this Rolson one. This is about the only toolbox I'll keep this one in. It's much better on the market. Just keep an old tobacco tin. That's just where I keep all my blades. Loads of blades, cutting plasterboard and things like that. Just keep a bunch of them, save them rattling around. I just know this is a small tool. I don't know if it's got another name to it, but just when you need it, you really need it. It just gets in little gaps, and just you can spread the plaster out nicely and just get it nice and tidy, even in the smallest of areas. And it does come in useful. When you need it, you really need it. Got some marking tools. Go Sharpie marker and pencil. I need to get a few more of those. Marshalltown knife. Did a bit of a review on all heavy duty knives that I had. I forgot this one was in here. I'm pretty glad I didn't include it. This really is pretty rubbish. I wouldn't recommend this. It's such a good brand. Why they put their name to this, I don't know. But it's just kind of a cheapo plastic and stroke rubber handle. Mechanism's not great, but it works. It's fairly sort of chunky in the hand, but it's just I think there's just far better out there. I'd go with one of the Stanley models rather than this. Don't be drawn in by the name. Just my opinion. Yeah, I try and keep plasters and things. The amount of times I cut myself and you just got blood pouring all over the place. You might not be in a whole lot of pain, but you just got blood going everywhere, especially when you're working around a customer's house. I don't do any site work. I'm just purely working domestic. So just any way that you can just stop a bleed from happening, then it can be really quite embarrassing, especially if they've got cream carpets. And yeah, dealing with trowels and things, sharp edges on trowels are the most common way I'm going to cut myself when I'm plastering. These brushes, this one's still sealed. Usually what I try and do is I try and like shave an edge on them so that they've got a bit of a sharper point. But I use these just for corners and joining up corners nicely and putting a really nice finish on a corner. Just get a little bit of water on it. And I find the long reach of a handle like this is really good. I also use sash brushes, which are like a pointed round brush. I think they're called sash brushes, but yeah, I find them pretty good as well. But these have got a nice long reach to them, so I don't have to use my hop up to get to it. I don't have to stretch too much. So yeah, keep a couple of them handy. The front here, keep a load of scrim tape. I always try and keep them wrapped up where possible because they dry out, and once these dry out they're just useless. You've got to throw them. So yeah, keep plenty of that stocked up though. And I keep here, if you see this little area here, the way I organised it works quite nicely because I've got the screws all different shapes and sizes, and it's just whatever's left over the time. But I can put my impact driver just in this little spare section here if I'm doing boarding and stuff like that. I tend to keep this box outside of the room. There's no point in keeping it in the room. Most of the tools that you're going to use kind of come out of it, and you can keep all the dust and all the any splashes or anything like that out of this box. But yeah, I keep my screws and hit things in here, so I've got a whole bunch of all different sizes so that I can do overboarding, I can do just standard boarding, just your typical plasterboard screws, and some more there. Just yeah, always good to have on hand. Here's a few more hand tools. So keep an old pry bar in here. I find flat bars are really useful. This is an old CK one. Just see it there. Just for prying things, scraping things, everything. It just really works well for plastering. An old bar like this, brilliant. Quite an old school tool. Don't quite use it as much as I used to back in the day, but it's got a waffle face on it, plasterboard hammer. This is a Stanley one. It's got the anti-vibe handle. So yeah, nice hammer. I think it's 14 ounce usually they come in at. Yeah, it says 14 there. Just general purpose, really good. Demolishing plasterboard, breaking through things. You can even like cut with it if you sharpen it properly. It's got a bit of an edge on it, but I haven't sharpened it for a while, so it's a bit scruffy. But yeah, useful to have in a plastering toolbox. And I keep my Estwing, or one of my Estwings in here. I really like the rubber handles, but I find the curved claw on this just really works well for a plastering toolbox. I'll be doing a review on Estwing hammers soon enough. Yeah, good to have, but any cheap old hammer will work. This saw here, I've had plenty of these over the years. This is a Barco prize cut, it's called. It's only tiny, it's like a toolbox size, but it's even smaller and weaker, a little bit thinner than a lot of toolbox saws. But if you have a look at the teeth, they're really, really fine. So they're coming at Yeah, so it's 15 teeth. It's coming in 16 points. I just ignore that bit. I don't know how they measure it, but basically the more teeth it's got, the finer it is. And yeah, this is really good for coving. That's why I keep it in here. I do a lot of coving and things, so you can just get a really nice fine cut. If you use a saw that's too that's not fine enough, then you're just going to tear it all over the place. This puts a really nice finish on it. There's better options out there and stiffer options for the saws, but I find this really, really good. And I should have a cove mitre in here. There you go, stuff down there. I've got a few of these lying about, but cove miters are great. And I also use, let's see if I can find it for you behind me in my workshop. I also use something, it's kind of like a magic miter. I'll dig it out for you in a second. You see in here I've got my, it's like a painter's bucket. And that painter's bucket just allows me to organise all the tools so that they can remain upright, and it just makes it a lot more efficient than just carrying them lengthways. Here you go. Sorry about the noise there. I managed to dig out what they call a cove easy. This is really, really good. But as you can see, it's just really chunky it'll just fill a toolbox. So I tend to take it with me on a coving job, but it's nice to have that little coving mitre that just sits in the corner of my toolbox. A lot easier. But if you're doing coving, you see something like this. I don't think Cove Easy make it anymore, but I think you can buy something like it on Screwfix. But this is a really, really handy tool to have. And it really, if you get confused by the cuts and everything like that, then this just really simplifies it for you, because you're looking down on the coving as opposed to when you use the mitre. But yeah, I don't keep that in my box, obviously. That is all my tools that I'm carrying. Nothing in the bottom there. Yeah, that's my plastering toolbox. I feel like it's organised. It's a lot better than what I used to carry, and I've certainly lightened the load a lot. But obviously with plastering tools, you've got buckets, you've got levels, you've got mixers. There's all sorts to come out when you're doing it. But for the very, very basics that you're going to carry into the house, this seems to work for me. I hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. If you have, then please check out my other ones and like and subscribe. And if you've got any suggestions, any positive discussion, I'd love to hear it. Please just leave a comment. Thank you very much.